corporate party was supposed to be a celebration. 20 years of marriage, and Cassie had finally agreed to let me tag along to one of her work events. I should have known something was wrong when she spent 2 hours getting ready and told me to dress nice, but not too nice. "Jake, remember what we talked about," she said in the car, checking her lipstick in the mirror for the 5th time. "Keep it low-key tonight. This is important for my career." I adjusted my tie, the blue one she'd picked out, then rejected, then picked out again. Since when do I not keep things low-key? You know what I mean. Her voice had that edge it got lately whenever we talked about anything real. Just don't be too much yourself. The venue was one of those trendy downtown places with exposed brick and Edison bulbs hanging from the ceiling like expensive Christmas lights, the kind of place that charged $18 for a burger and called it artisanal. I watched Cassie transform the moment we walked through the door. Her shoulders straightened, her smile brightened, and suddenly she was this vibrant, magnetic person I barely recognized anymore. "Cassie," a woman with perfectly blown-out hair rushed over. "You look amazing, and this must be—" She looked at me like she was trying to solve a math problem. "This is Jake," Cassie said, her voice flat. "Not my husband Jake, or even Jake, my husband. Just Jake," like I was her Uber driver who'd wandered inside. "Nice to meet you," I said, extending my hand to the woman. "I'm Cassie's husband." The woman, Monica, according to her name tag, looked genuinely surprised. "Oh, I didn't realize you were— Cassie never mentioned." "Work talk is so boring," Cassie cut in quickly. "Monica, have you tried the shrimp? They look incredible." And just like that, I was dismissed. I watched my wife of 20 years guide Monica toward the appetizer table, leaving me standing alone near the entrance like a coat someone had forgotten to check. The next 2 hours were a masterclass in public invisibility. Cassie worked the room like a politician, touching arms, laughing at jokes that weren't funny, and introducing me to exactly no one. When people asked who I was, she'd say, "This is Jake," and immediately change the subject. When her boss, a guy named Eric Walsh, who looked like he'd stepped out of a men's grooming commercial, came over, she practically pushed me toward the bar. "Get me a white wine," she said without looking at me. "The good stuff." I stood at the bar, watching my wife charm her boss. Eric was everything I wasn't. Tall, perfectly groomed, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly salary. He leaned in when Cassie talked, touched her arm when he laughed, and looked at her like she was the most fascinating person in the room. "Rough night?" The bartender, a kid with sleeve tattoos and kind eyes, nodded toward my empty glass. "My wife's pretending we're not married," I said, then immediately felt stupid for saying it out loud. "Ouch." He poured me another whiskey. "That's cold, man." "Yeah, well, 20 years of marriage teaches you to roll with the punches." But this wasn't rolling with punches. This was something else entirely. I'd been watching Cassie all night, and it wasn't just that she was ignoring me. She was actively performing being single. The way she stood, the way she talked, the way she let Eric's hand linger on her lower back when he guided her through the crowd. I thought about the last 6 months, how she'd stopped posting photos of us on social media, how she'd started going to work events without me, how she'd begun arriving places separately, leaving separately, like being seen together would somehow damage her reputation. "You're imagining things," she'd said when I brought it up. "I'm just focused on my career right now. You should be supportive." But watching her now, seeing how she lit up for everyone except me, I realized I wasn't imagining anything. I was just finally seeing clearly. The music wasn't too loud near the bar area. Soft jazz, the kind of background noise designed to make people feel sophisticated while they drank overpriced cocktails and made small talk about quarterly reports. I finished my drink and walked over to where Cassie stood with Eric and a few other coworkers. "Having fun?" I asked, sliding up beside her. She tensed immediately. "Oh, hi. Yes, it's been lovely." The conversation continued around us, something about market projections and client retention. I wasn't really listening. I was watching my wife's body language, how she angled herself away from me, how her smile faltered whenever I spoke. When there was a lull in the conversation, I did what any husband might do at a party. I leaned in to kiss her cheek, nothing dramatic, just a simple, affectionate gesture between spouses. She jerked back like I'd slapped her. "Oh, don't do this," she whispered urgently, her eyes darting toward Eric. "My boss will think we are together." The words hit me like a physical blow. Still together. Not think we're married or think we're a couple. Still together. As if our relationship was already past tense. As if she'd been telling people we were separated, broken up, done. In that moment, everything clicked into place. The separate arrivals, The hidden social media, the way Monica had looked confused when I introduced myself as Cassie's husband, the way Eric touched her so casually, so familiarly. She'd been selling a story where I didn't exist, where we were already over, and I'd been the only one who didn't know the plot. I stared at her for a long moment, watching the panic flicker across her face as she realized what she'd said. Then I smiled, a calm, peaceful smile that seemed to confuse her more than anger would have. "You're absolutely right," I said softly. "He might actually think we're in a relationship. We can't have that." Relief flooded her features. She thought I was going to play along, help her maintain whatever fiction she'd been spinning. But then I added, still smiling, "When we get home tonight, you can sign the divorce papers. If you've been telling people we're done, we might as well make it official. Then we'll both be free." Her breath caught. The color drained from her face. "No, wait, you misunderstood," she whispered frantically, reaching for my sleeve. "I didn't mean—" I gently removed her hand from my arm. "It's fine, Cassie. Really. We'll go home, you'll sign the papers, and then you'll understand what you've been doing. So will I." Eric had stopped talking about market projections. The entire group was staring at us now, sensing the drama but not quite understanding it. I could see Monica whispering to someone behind her hand. "Jake, please," Cassie said, her voice barely audible. "Can we talk about this at home?" "Sure," I said, my voice steady and calm. "We can talk all you want, after you sign." I turned to Eric, who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else in the world. "Great party," I told him. "Thanks for taking such good care of my wife. I'm sure she'll have lots more time for work events soon." Then I walked away, leaving Cassie standing there with her mouth open and her carefully constructed performance crumbling around her. The drive home was 23 minutes of pure silence. Cassie sat in the passenger seat, staring out the window, probably trying to figure out how to spin this, how to make me the bad guy, how to turn her public humiliation into my fault. I'd seen this before. 20 years of marriage teaches you your spouse's patterns. When Cassie got caught doing something wrong, she didn't apologize. She didn't explain. She attacked. "You embarrassed me," she said as we pulled into our driveway. Right on schedule. "I embarrassed you?" I put the car in park and turned to look at her. "Cassie, you told your boss we weren't together. At a party, in front of your coworkers." "That's not what I meant, and you know it." "Then what did you mean?" She fumbled with her purse, avoiding eye contact. I meant don't make a scene. Don't draw attention. You know how I feel about public displays of affection." "Since when? We've been married 20 years. I've kissed you at 1,000 parties." "This was different. This was work." "Right. Work. Where apparently I don't exist." We sat in the car, engine ticking as it cooled, both of us staring at our house. The house we'd bought together 15 years ago. The house where we'd planned to grow old together. The house that suddenly felt like a set piece in someone else's play. "I'm not signing anything tonight," Cassie said finally. "You're upset. You're not thinking clearly." "I'm thinking more clearly than I have in months." Inside, I went straight to our home office. My home office, really, since Cassie never used it, and pulled out the laptop. It took me exactly 12 minutes to find a divorce attorney's website and download the preliminary paperwork. Another 8 minutes to fill in the basic information. Cassie appeared in the doorway as I was printing. "You're serious about this?" "Dead serious." "Over one misunderstanding at a party." I looked up from the printer. "Cassie, when was the last time you posted a picture of us together on social media?" "I don't know. I don't keep track of—" "6 months ago, I checked. When was the last time we went to a work event together?" "You hate work events." "Tonight. And before that." She was quiet. "Before that was never, Cassie. You've never invited me to a work event. Your coworkers don't know I exist. Your boss was surprised to meet your husband. Your friend Monica looked like she'd seen a ghost when I introduced myself." "You're being paranoid." "Am I? Then explain something to me. Explain why you told Eric we weren't still together. Not that we weren't married, not that we weren't a couple. Still together? Like we used to be together but aren't anymore." The printer finished. I pulled out the papers, still warm, and set them on the desk between us. "Explain that, and I'll tear these up right now." Cassie stared at the papers like they might bite her. I was nervous. I misspoke. "Try again. Jake, please, can't we work on this? Go to counseling or something?" "Work on what exactly? Work on you pretending I don't exist? Work on you being ashamed to be married to me? Work on whatever's going on between you and Eric?" Her face went white. "There's nothing going on between me and Eric." "Right. That's why he had his hand on your back all night. That's why you lit up like a Christmas tree every time he talked to you. That's why you panicked when I tried to kiss you in front of him. He's my boss, Jake. I have to be professional. Professional doesn't mean pretending you're single. We stared at each other across the desk. 20 years of marriage, and I felt like I was looking at a stranger. This woman who used to laugh at my jokes, who used to hold my hand at parties, who used to be proud to introduce me as her husband. I need time to think, she said finally. Take all the time you need, but you're not sleeping in our bed tonight, and you're not leaving this house without signing those papers. You can't keep me here. I'm not keeping you anywhere, but if you leave without signing, I'll file for divorce tomorrow morning and you'll get served at work, in front of Eric, in front of everyone. It was a bluff, mostly. I had no idea how divorce filings actually worked, but Cassie didn't know that. She grabbed the papers and stormed out of the office. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, heard the guest bedroom door slam. I sat alone in the office, staring at the computer screen, wondering how 20 years of marriage had come down to this, wondering when my wife had decided I was something to be ashamed of, wondering who the hell Eric Walsh was to her, really. I opened Facebook and searched for Cassie's profile. Her most recent post was from 3 hours ago, a selfie at the party, looking radiant and happy. The caption read, "Living my best life. So grateful for amazing coworkers and new opportunities. A blessed hark new chapter. New chapter. Not new chapters. Singular. Like the old chapter, the one with me in it, was already closed. I scrolled through her recent posts. Photos of her at restaurants I'd never been to. Photos of her at work events I'd never attended. Photos of her with coworkers I'd never met. It was like looking at the social media profile of someone I'd never married, but it was the comments that really got me. Her coworkers responding like she was single, men flirting openly, women asking if she was dating anyone, and Cassie responding with winking emojis and maybe soon and we'll see what happens. I screenshotted everything. I didn't know why, exactly. Just felt like I should have evidence of something. Around 2 a.m, I heard footsteps in the hallway. The front door opened and closed softly. I looked out the window and watched Cassie get into her car and drive away. She'd left the divorce papers on the kitchen counter, unsigned. I called in sick to work the next morning. 23 years at the same construction company, and I'd used maybe 10 sick days total. My boss, Tommy, didn't even question it. Take care of yourself, Jake. See you Monday. If only he knew, I spent the morning doing something I'd never thought I'd do, investigating my own wife. It felt pathetic and necessary at the same time, like getting a suspicious mole checked out. You hope it's nothing, but you need to know. Cassie worked at Morrison & Associates, a mid-sized marketing firm downtown. I'd driven her to work exactly once, when her car was in the shop 2 years ago. She'd made me drop her off at the corner, said she didn't want people asking questions about her personal life. At the time, I thought it was sweet. Professional boundaries. Now it felt like another red flag I'd ignored. I drove to her office building and parked across the street. Felt like a creep, but I needed to see something, needed to understand what I was dealing with. At 11:47 a.m., Cassie emerged from the building with Eric Walsh. They walked to a coffee shop 2 blocks away, and even from a distance, I could see this wasn't a business meeting. The way she touched his arm when she laughed. The way he leaned across the table toward her. The way she played with her hair. Something she used to do with me, back when we were dating. They were gone for an hour and a half. When they walked back toward the office, Eric's hand was on the small of her back. Possessive. Familiar. I sat in my truck, watching my wife disappear into a building with another man, and felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, exactly. More like clarity. The kind of clarity you get when you finally admit something you've been avoiding. My phone buzzed. Text from Cassie. "We need to talk. I'll be home at 6. I texted back, "Papers signed?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Then, "We'll discuss everything tonight." That wasn't a yes. I drove home and did something else I'd never done. I searched our house. Not like a crazy person, just methodically, looking for evidence of whatever had been happening right under my nose. In Cassie's nightstand, I found a second phone, a cheap prepaid thing, the kind you buy at gas stations. It was password protected, but the lock screen showed dozens of unread messages from E. In her closet, I found new lingerie, expensive stuff, still in the boxes. Victoria's Secret, Agent Provocateur, brands that cost more than I made in a day. We hadn't been intimate in 3 months, but apparently someone was seeing Cassie in fancy underwear. In her laptop bag, I found business cards from hotels downtown. The Marriott, the Hilton, the boutique place on 5th Street that charged $300 a night. All of them had dates written on the back in Cassie's handwriting, all of them from the last 4 months. I sat on our bed, my bed apparently, holding a business card from the Ritz-Carlton dated 2 weeks ago, and tried to process what I was looking at. My wife hadn't just been emotionally cheating. She'd been living a completely separate life. A life with hotel rooms and secret phones and lingerie I'd never seen. The front door opened at 6:03 p.m. "Jake," Cassie's voice echoed through the house. "We need to talk." I walked downstairs carrying the prepaid phone and one of the hotel business cards. Cassie was in the kitchen, still in her work clothes, looking nervous but determined. "I've been thinking all day," she started. "About what happened last night. About what you said. And I think you're right. We should talk about where we are, as a couple." I set the phone and the business card on the kitchen counter between us. Cassie went very still. "Where are we as a couple, Cassie?" She stared at the evidence, her face cycling through emotions. Surprise, fear, anger, and finally something that looked almost like relief. "You went through my things. I went through our things. In our house. That I pay the mortgage on. You had no right. I had no right. Cassie, you've been screwing your boss for months. You've been pretending to be single. You've been living in hotel rooms on my dime while telling everyone our marriage is over. But I had no right to look for evidence?" She sat down heavily in one of the kitchen chairs. For a moment, she looked like she might cry. Then she looked up at me, and her expression was different. Harder. "You want to know the truth, Jake? Fine. Yes, I'm seeing Eric. Yes, I've been telling people we're separated. And yes, I want a divorce." There it was. 20 years of marriage, ended with the emotional weight of a grocery list. "How long? Does it matter?" "It matters to me." She sighed. 4 months, maybe 5. "And you were planning to tell me when?" "I was working up to it. I wanted to make sure it was real with Eric before I blew up my whole life." "Your whole life? What about my life, Cassie? What about our life?" "What life, Jake? When was the last time we had a real conversation? When was the last time you surprised me, or took me somewhere nice, or made me feel like I was more than just your roommate? When was the last time you gave me the chance? You've been pulling away for months. I thought you were stressed about work." "I was stressed about this. About us. About feeling trapped in a marriage that wasn't making either of us happy." "So you decided to have an affair instead of talking to me." "I decided to see what else was out there, and I found something better." The words hung in the air between us. Something better. Not someone better. Something. Like our entire marriage was just a thing to be upgraded from. "Eric makes me feel alive again," she continued. "He takes me places, buys me things, makes me feel beautiful. When was the last time you made me feel beautiful, Jake? When was the last time you let me try?" We stared at each other across the kitchen. 20 years of shared history, and it felt like we were speaking different languages. "I'll sign the papers," she said finally. "But I want half of everything. The house, the savings, the retirement accounts, all of it. Half of everything I worked for while you were playing house with your boss. Half of everything we built together." "We didn't build this together, Cassie. I built it while you spent it. I worked 60-hour weeks while you went to yoga and book clubs and apparently hotel rooms with Eric." "That's not fair. None of this is fair. Fair would have been you talking to me before you started screwing around. Fair would have been marriage counseling before you decided to trade me in for a newer model." She stood up, grabbed the divorce papers from the counter. "Fine. I'll sign your papers. But I'm getting a lawyer, and I'm getting what I'm entitled to. Get the best lawyer you can afford. Get Eric to pay for it. But you're not getting half of anything." She signed the papers with sharp, angry strokes, then threw the pen down on the counter. "I'll be back tomorrow to get my things. Take your time, but take the prepaid phone and the hotel business cards with you. I don't want any reminders of who you really are." She grabbed her purse and headed for the door, then turned back. "You know what, Jake? You're right about one thing. I am ashamed to be married to you. I have been for years. Eric treats me like a queen. You treat me like a piece of furniture. Eric treats you like a mistress. There's a difference. We'll see about that." She slammed the door behind her, and I was alone in the house we'd shared for 15 years. I looked around the kitchen, at the table where we'd eaten breakfast together for 2 decades, at the refrigerator covered with photos of us from happier times, at the window where she used to stand and wave goodbye when I left for work. It all looked the same, but it felt like a museum now, a collection of artifacts from a marriage that had apparently been over for months without me knowing it. I poured myself a beer and sat at the kitchen table, staring at the signed divorce papers. It should have felt like victory, like closure. Instead, it felt like the end of a book I'd never finished reading. The next few weeks passed in a blur of lawyers and paperwork and awkward conversations with friends who didn't know what to say. Cassie moved in with her sister temporarily, though I suspected she was spending most of her time at Eric's place. Our mutual friends handled the news about as well as you'd expect. Some of them took sides immediately, others tried to stay neutral and ended up satisfying no one. A few just disappeared entirely, like divorce was contagious. The worst part was the pity, the way people looked at me like I was a victim of some natural disaster. "I'm so sorry," they'd say, like Cassie had died instead of just deciding she preferred her boss to her husband. But it was our friend group's reaction that really got to me. These were people we'd known for years, people who'd been to our house for barbecues and birthday parties, people who'd watched us build a life together, and they all claimed they'd seen it coming. "Cassie seemed unhappy for a while," said Jennifer, my friend Mike's wife. "We wondered when she was going to do something about it." "She mentioned she was feeling trapped," added Kenia, Tom's girlfriend, "like she'd gotten married too young and missed out on things." "She said you two had grown apart," Mike told me over beers one night. "Said you didn't understand her anymore." It was like discovering that everyone had been talking about my marriage except me. Like I'd been the star of a reality show and no one had told me the cameras were rolling. "Why didn't anyone say anything to me?" I asked Mike. "What were we supposed to say? Hey, Jake, your wife complains about you behind your back? That's not really our place." "But it was your place to listen to her complain?" Mike looked uncomfortable. She needed someone to talk to. She had someone to talk to. Me, her husband. Come on, man, you know it wasn't that simple. But it was that simple, or it should have been. If Cassie was unhappy, she should have talked to me. If our friends were concerned, they should have said something. Instead, everyone had just watched our marriage fall apart and acted surprised when it finally collapsed. The breaking point came 3 weeks after Cassie signed the papers. I was at Tom and Kenia's place for what was supposed to be a casual dinner. Just the four of us. Me, Mike, Tom, and Kenia. Jennifer was busy, though I suspected she just didn't want to deal with the awkwardness of socializing with a newly divorced man. We were having a decent time, all things considered. Good food, cold beer, conversation that didn't revolve around my personal life. Then Tom's doorbell rang. "That's weird," Tom said, getting up to answer it. I wasn't expecting anyone. I heard voices in the hallway. Tom's voice, and then a woman's voice I recognized immediately. Cassie walked into the living room, followed by Eric Walsh. The temperature in the room dropped about 20 degrees. Mike and Kenia suddenly became very interested in their dinner plates. Tom looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. "Hi, everyone," Cassie said brightly, like this was perfectly normal. "Sorry we're late. Traffic was terrible." Late, like they had been invited, like this was planned. I looked at Tom. "You invited them?" "Jake, I can explain." "Explain what? That you invited my ex-wife and her boyfriend to dinner without telling me?" We thought maybe it was time for everyone to start getting along," Kenia said quietly. "For the sake of the group. For the sake of the group. We're all adults here," Eric said, extending his hand toward me. "No reason we can't be civil." I stared at his hand like it was a snake. This man had been sleeping with my wife for months, had been the reason she'd been ashamed to be seen with me, had been the something better she'd found to replace 20 years of marriage, and now he wanted to shake hands and be civil. "You're right," I said, standing up. "Now, we are all adults, which is why I'm going to tell you exactly what I think of you, Eric." "Jake, please," Cassie said. "Don't make a scene." "Don't make a scene? You brought your boyfriend to dinner with our friends without telling me, and I'm the one making a scene." "We're trying to move forward," she said. "We're trying to be mature about this." Mature, right. Like having an affair was mature. Like lying to me for months was mature. Like pretending to be single at work parties was mature. Eric stepped forward. "Look, Jake, I understand you're upset." "You understand I'm upset? You stole my wife and you understand I'm upset?" "Nobody stole anybody," Eric said calmly. "Cassie made her own choice. After you spent months seducing a married woman. After I showed her what she was missing." The room went dead silent. Even Cassie looked shocked at what Eric had just said. "What I was missing," I repeated slowly. "Jake, that's not what he meant," Cassie said quickly. But Eric wasn't backing down. "Actually, it is what I meant. Cassie deserves someone who appreciates her, someone who can give her the life she wants." "The life she wants? You mean hotel rooms and secret phones and lying to everyone about her marriage?" "I mean a life with someone who's going somewhere, someone with ambition, someone who can provide for her properly." Mike cleared his throat. "Maybe we should all just—" "No," I said, not taking my eyes off Eric. Let him finish. I want to hear what he thinks I wasn't providing. Eric looked around the room, probably realizing he'd gone too far, but too proud to back down. You work construction, Jake. You drive a 10-year-old truck. You live in the same house you bought 15 years ago. Cassie's a smart, beautiful woman who deserves more than that. More than that. More than a faithful husband who worked his ass off to support her. More than a man who loved her for 20 years. More than someone who never lied to her or cheated on her or made her feel ashamed of who she was. More than someone who was holding her back. That was it, the line I couldn't let him cross. I stepped closer to Eric, close enough that he had to look up at me. You think you're better than me because you wear expensive suits and drive a fancy car? You think that makes you a man? I think it makes me a better provider. A better provider? Eric, you're sleeping with a married woman. You helped her lie to her husband for months. You're the kind of man who sees a wedding ring as a challenge instead of a boundary. What exactly do you think that makes you? Eric's face was getting red. It makes me someone who goes after what he wants. It makes you a predator. Jake, stop, Cassie said, but I wasn't finished. You want to know what you really are, Eric? You're a middle-aged man who gets off on stealing other people's wives because you're too pathetic to find someone who's actually available. You're not better than me. You're not more successful than me. You're just more willing to be a piece of shit. That's enough, Eric said, his voice tight. No, it's not enough. Because you came into my friend's house, looked me in the eye, and told me my wife deserved better than me. After you spent months helping her destroy our marriage. After you turned her into someone I didn't recognize. After you made her ashamed to be seen with the man she promised to love and honor. I turned to look at Cassie, who was standing frozen by the doorway. Is this what you wanted, Cassie? Is this the man you traded me for? Someone who thinks so little of marriage that he'd pursue a married woman? Someone who thinks so little of you that he'd make you his mistress instead of waiting for you to get divorced first? It wasn't like that, she said weakly. It was exactly like that. You just don't want to admit it. I looked around the room at Mike, Tom, and Kenya. My friends, people I'd known for years. People who'd sat there and listened to Eric insult me and hadn't said a word. And you three, I said. You invited them here. You thought it would be nice for all of us to have dinner together. The betrayed husband and the happy couple. Like one big, dysfunctional family. We were trying to help, Kenya said. Help who? Help me get over being humiliated? Help them feel better about what they did? Or help yourselves feel less guilty about taking sides? We didn't take sides, Tom said. You absolutely took sides. You invited them to dinner. You're treating them like a legitimate couple. You're acting like what they did was okay because they're happy now. We just want everyone to get along, Mike said. Everyone to get along. Mike, this man destroyed my marriage. He turned my wife into someone who was ashamed to kiss me at a party. He made her lie to me for months while she lived a double life. And you want me to get along with him? It's over, Jake, Cassie said. We're divorced. We've all moved on. Why can't you? Moved on. Cassie, it's been 3 weeks. 3 weeks since you signed papers ending a 20-year marriage. Forgive me if I haven't moved on from 2 decades of my life quite that quickly. I grabbed my jacket from the back of my chair and headed for the door. Where are you going? Tom asked. Home. To my house that apparently isn't good enough for successful people. To my 10-year-old truck that apparently makes me a loser. To my construction worker life that apparently no smart, beautiful woman should have to settle for. I stopped at the door and turned back to face the room. You know what the funny thing is? I actually thought you were my friends. I thought you cared about me. But you've been talking about my marriage behind my back for months, and now you're having dinner parties with the people who destroyed it, so I guess I know where I stand? Jake, come on, Mike said. Don't be like this. Don't be like what? Don't be hurt that my friends are socializing with my ex-wife and her boyfriend? Don't be angry that you ambushed me with this? Don't be upset that you're all acting like I'm the problem here? You are being kind of dramatic, Kenya said. Dramatic. The word hit me like a slap. Dramatic. Right. I'm being dramatic because I don't want to have dinner with the man who helped my wife cheat on me. I'm being dramatic because I expected my friends to have my back instead of planning social events with the people who betrayed me. I looked at each of them one more time. Mike, who'd been my friend since college. Tom, who'd been the best man at my wedding. Kanaya, who'd cried when I told her about the divorce. You want to have dinner with them? Fine. Have dinner with them. But don't expect me to pretend this is normal. Don't expect me to shake hands with Eric and act like he's a good guy who just happened to fall in love with my wife. And don't expect me to be friends with people who think I'm being dramatic for having feelings about it. I walked out of Tom's house and drove home, my hands shaking with anger and hurt and something that felt like grief. Not just for my marriage, but for friendships I'd thought were real. for people I'd thought I could count on. That night, I sat in my kitchen with a beer and my phone, deleting contact information. Mike's number, Tom's number, Kenia's number. People who'd decided that maintaining their social group was more important than loyalty. People who'd rather have dinner with my ex-wife and her boyfriend than deal with the awkwardness of choosing sides. By the time I was finished, my phone felt a lot lighter. So did I, in a strange way. If they wanted to be friends with Cassie and Eric, that was their choice. But they weren't going to be friends with me too. Some things were too important for Switzerland. 6 months after the divorce was finalized, I was a different man. Not better or worse, exactly, just different. I'd lost 20 pounds, grown a beard, and started going to the gym regularly. I'd also started dating, though nothing serious, mostly just reminding myself that there were women in the world who didn't think I was something to be ashamed of. I was having coffee with my coworker Danny when I saw them, Cassie and Eric, at a table near the window of the cafe across the street. They looked like they were arguing about something. Cassie's face was red, her gestures sharp and frustrated. Eric was leaning back in his chair, arms crossed, looking like he'd rather be anywhere else. "Trouble in paradise?" Danny asked, following my gaze. "Looks like it." We watched for a few minutes as the argument escalated. Cassie was clearly upset about something, pointing at her phone, then at Eric, then back at her phone. Eric kept shaking his head, holding up his hands like he was trying to calm her down. Finally, Cassie stood up abruptly, grabbed her purse, and stormed out of the cafe. Eric sat there for a moment, then pulled out his phone and made a call. "Wonder what that was about," Danny said. I found out 3 days later. I was at the grocery store, minding my own business, when I ran into Monica, Cassie's friend from the office party, the one who'd looked so confused when I introduced myself as Cassie's husband. "Jake," she said, like we were old friends. "How are you? You look great." "Thanks. I'm doing well." "Good for you. I always thought you seemed like a nice guy." Always thought. Past tense. Like she'd only recently formed this opinion. "Thanks," I said again, trying to edge past her toward the checkout line. "It's so crazy about Cassie and Eric," she said, clearly fishing for information. I stopped. "What about them?" "Oh, you didn't hear? They broke up, like spectacularly. She found out he was seeing someone else, someone from the office, if you can believe it." I could believe it, actually. A man who'd pursue a married woman wasn't likely to be faithful to his mistress-turned-girlfriend. "When did this happen?" "Last week. She's been a mess ever since. Crying at work, calling in sick, the whole thing. I feel bad for her, but honestly, I saw it coming." "You saw it coming." "Well, yeah. I mean, Eric's got a reputation. Everyone knows he likes to sample the merchandise, if you know what I mean. Cassie thought she was special, but she was just the latest in a long line." The latest in a long line. So Cassie hadn't been Eric's first affair. She'd just been his most recent conquest. "Is she okay?" I asked, surprising myself by caring. "She's staying with her sister again. Rachel's worried about her. She keeps talking about what a mistake she made, how she threw away her marriage for nothing." Monica leaned closer, lowering her voice. "Between you and me, I think she expected Eric to propose or something. Move in together, make it official. Instead, he started screwing around with Janet from accounting." Janet from accounting. Cassie had been replaced by Janet from accounting. "That's rough," I said, and meant it. "She keeps asking people if they think you talk to her. If maybe there's a chance you two could work things out." I stared at Monica. "Work things out?" I know, after everything that happened. But she's really sorry, Jake. She realizes what she lost." What she lost? Not who she hurt, not what she'd done. What she'd lost. "Monica, Cassie didn't lose anything. She threw it away. There's a difference." "I know, but she had 20 years with a man who loved her. A man who worked his ass off to give her a good life. A man who never cheated on her or lied to her or made her feel like she was something to be ashamed of. And she traded all of that for hotel rooms with her boss." Monica looked uncomfortable. She made a mistake. She made a choice. A lot of choices, actually. She chose to have an affair. She chose to lie to me for months. She chose to humiliate me at that party. She chose to divorce me so she could be with Eric. Those weren't mistakes. They were decisions. But now she knows she was wrong. Now she knows Eric wasn't the upgrade she thought he was. That's not the same thing as being sorry. I pushed my cart toward the checkout line, but Monica followed me. "She really is sorry, Jake. She told me she'd do anything to fix things with you. Anything except stay faithful to her marriage vows. That's not fair." "Monica, let me ask you something. If Eric called Cassie right now and said he wanted her back, what do you think she'd do?" Monica was quiet. "You think she'd say no? You think she'd tell him she was too busy trying to fix her marriage? I don't know. I do. She'd be back in his bed before the sun went down. The only reason she wants to work things out with me is because her upgrade didn't work out the way she planned. I paid for my groceries and headed for the parking lot. Monica called after me. Jake, wait! What should I tell her? I turned around one last time. Tell her I hope she's okay. Tell her I hope she learns something from this. But tell her we're done. We were done the minute she decided Eric was something better. That night, I got a text from a number I didn't recognize. Jake, it's me. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to talk to you. Can we meet for coffee, please? Cassie. I stared at the message for a long time. Part of me was curious. Part of me wanted to hear what she had to say, wanted to know if she'd finally figured out what she'd thrown away. But a bigger part of me remembered the look on her face when she jerked away from my kiss at that party. Remembered her telling Eric that her boss might think we were still together. Remembered her signing those divorce papers with angry, sharp strokes. I deleted the message without responding. 2 days later, another text. I know I hurt you. I know I don't deserve a second chance. But I love you, Jake. I always loved you. I just got confused. I deleted that one too. A week later. Eric was a mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. You were right about everything. Please just give me a chance to explain. Delete. I saw you at the grocery store last week. You looked good, happy, I'm glad. I just want you to know that I know what I lost. I know what I gave up. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Delete. The messages kept coming for 3 weeks, each one more desperate than the last, each one full of regret and apologies and promises to do better. But none of them said the one thing I needed to hear. None of them acknowledged that she'd made me feel worthless. None of them recognized that she'd humiliated me in front of people we'd known for years. None of them understood that saying I'm sorry wasn't enough to undo months of lies and betrayal. Finally, I sent a response. Cassie, I got your messages. I'm glad Eric showed you who he really is. I'm glad you realize what you lost. But I'm not your backup plan. I'm not the safe choice you come back to when your exciting choice doesn't work out. Find someone else to fix your mistakes. We're done. Please don't contact me again. She didn't respond to that one. 3 months later, I heard through the construction site grapevine that Cassie had moved to another state. Started over somewhere new. I hoped she found what she was looking for, but I was glad she was looking for it somewhere else. I kept the house, kept the truck, kept the job that apparently wasn't good enough for a smart, beautiful woman. And slowly, carefully, I started building a new life. A life where I didn't have to wonder if the person I loved was ashamed to be seen with me. A life where I didn't have to worry about secret phones and hotel business cards and lies told at office parties. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was honest. It was mine, and it was enough. 6 months after Cassie moved away, I met Kenya. Not Tom's Kenya, a different Kenya, at a bookstore downtown. She was funny and kind and worked as a teacher. When I told her I was divorced, she didn't ask for details. When I told her I worked construction, she said her dad had been a carpenter and was the best man she'd ever known. On our 3rd date, she posted a picture of us together on Instagram. Just a simple photo of us at dinner, smiling at the camera. The caption read, "Great night with this amazing man." I stared at that post for a long time, remembering how Cassie had hidden our relationship like it was something shameful. Remembering how she'd refused to kiss me at that party because her boss might think we were together. Kenya saw me looking at my phone and leaned over to see what I was staring at. "You okay?" she asked. "Yeah," I said, putting my phone away. "I'm perfect." And for the first time in years, I meant it.